Hello everybody, this is Evan and I'm going to go over how to fix a Cricut that seems to be scoring across your material such as vinyl or paper. It's not basically lifting up and it doesn't seem to be cutting all the way through the material. When you call Provo Craft or you look online, they'll tell you to look at the blade housing or change the blade. So if you do all that stuff and you do a reset on your Cricut, which you can find the instructions online, it's basically pushing the reset button, which is back here. It's a red button. You hold it down for 3 seconds and then you take the cartridge, turn the power off, take the cartridge out, turn it back on, pull your dials all up and down. All your dials are up and down 3 times and it'll reset it, but that's not the exact instruction. You have to look online for that, and I might even post them in another video. But basically what we're going to do is, you've done all those troubleshooting and you've called Provo Craft and they want you to give them a receipt, and unfortunately I have so many of these that I've bought used that I don't have receipts, and they're not under warranty basically, even if they are 3 months old. So I'm going to show you what a problem is that I've found. It doesn't seem to be addressed online, and how to fix it. So what you're going to need for this fix is a little flathead screwdriver, okay, just small as you can get, a Phillips screwdriver, okay, and that's to pull these 3 out, which I've already done apparently. I just put it back on there so you'd recognize it. So I'm going to pull that off, and what you'll notice on one that's not working correctly is it'll be sitting down towards the material. That's why it's scoring across it. And the reason it's not actually cutting through the material is that there's nothing operating the motor to make it press down or pop back up. And that's why you're getting the scoring lines no matter how deep you put your blade depth settings or how much pressure you put. It seems to always be scoring the material, not cutting all the way through. So what I found, and this is just the other day, is that basically it's got connections to the motor right here. And I'll zoom in for you. It may take a second for this thing to adjust. Come on. It's not a high quality camera, as you can see. Okay, well they're right there. Well, first thing you can see, sort of, is the red wire. Okay, and behind that is a black wire. So one's a power, which is red, and usually the ground is a black, and that basically supplies electricity to the motor, which is this right here, and back out again, causing it to be able to work, making the blade go up and down, and apply pressure settings. So what I found was that although the wires are sitting in there, when I actually pushed on them a little bit, they became disconnected. And I guess how that happens through the troubleshooting I've looked up is that when you move the machine around or you transport it and you don't have anything in here to support the motor, it can bounce up and down, like you can see it does real easily, and actually wears at those little wires and breaks them in half. And you wouldn't know that they're broken in half unless you push on it, because they kind of stay put. So what I found is that both the wires were actually broken off of the connection points. Okay, so what we're going to address today is how to resolder those. And if you don't know how to resolder, don't get scared. You can look on Craigslist or go down to a local electronic repair shop, computer shop, and they'll have soldering irons, and you can bring your machine in there, and I bet they'd probably charge you $10 to do it. It doesn't really cost that much, but if you know how to solder and you have a soldering iron, or you can borrow one, we're going to go over the easiest way to go ahead and fix that problem. So bear with me, and we'll go through it right here. So over here I have a really cheap soldering gun. I have a nicer one, but for some reason the temperature settings are messing up, so I'm going to use the cheap one. I'm going to show you, first off, this is going to be the red wire that's in there. We're not actually going to change any wires out, but I'm going to show you what you're going to do to the wire that's in the machine. The end of the wire is going to look like this. The problem is with that wire that's in there, if it breaks off, you're just going to see a plastic end. Okay, you're not actually going to see any wire exposed. The end of the wire might be exposed where it's connected to the motor, but it won't be exposed on the broken off wire. So this is real simple to do. The only thing you're going to do is take your little razor blade and slice away at the plastic until you actually see metal. Then just grab it with your fingernails and pull it off. And what you'll have left over is a little bit of wire hanging out at the end of the plastic. Okay, so it's probably only like an eighth of an inch, and that's plenty. So you take your wire, twist it a little bit, clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't really matter. So you're gonna do that, and then what you're gonna have to get is certain materials. One is flux. Okay, you can see right here I got it. This is a huge bottle, and it's $6.69. This is more than I've used in 5 years. So you can get a little tiny little bit, or you can get solder that has acid core to it or something, which works kind of the same. I like flux because flux is used for reflowing solder, which is already connected to the motor. And in the motor, it's already got a big old solder spot on there where the wire was connected first. So flux makes everything, I guess, reflow. Okay, so that's what I use for this whole setup. So I'll take my flux and I'll open it up at this point. Now that I've edged off the piece of my wire right here, the one that's actually inside the motor is the one you're going to do that to, the red and the black. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing, and they're basically both going to look like that. Again, a little piece of wire hanging out of them. Do not cut back too far because the wire is super short, and if you cut it too short, you'd end up having to splice wire, and that would be a nightmare. So we're going to go ahead and take a Q-tip, okay, and you're going to dip it in your flux over here, and you're just going to put a little bit on the wire. It's going to look like it's just a little bit wet, and that's more than enough that you need right there. Okay, and then you're going to, oops, if I can get control of stuff, it's kind of hard to manage all this at one time. But since I have a crappy iron right here, which I don't use for soldering, it's not, usually your iron will get, when you touch solder to it, it'll look silver. Okay, so this one actually is not tinting the tip, which is what they call it. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm actually just going to touch the solder to the wire cable right here. Okay, and then I'm just going to touch my heat to them. And what you'll see, oops, what you'll see is sorry guys, it's hard for me to control all three of these things right here, the camera and everything. So hopefully. I'm making this look a lot more difficult than it is. And it's probably because I'm video recording here, but as you melt the solder onto your tip of your iron right here, which will normally hold solder, you get it on your wire and you'll run it along the wire just like this. Now the flux will make it stick to the wire. I'm going to wet it again so it's a little, and you'll have a nice even little surface. Try not to get a ball of solder on your wire. So try to make it nice and tinted where, I don't know if you can see that in there, but basically the tip of the solder is stuck to the wire now, and it looks like a silver coin sheen to it. And basically now you've got solder on this wire, and there already will be solder on the motor. Okay, so now that you've reached in here and you've basically tinted both tips, don't worry about trying to get the whole thing silver, the whole wire silver. Just having half of it's fine as long as it's towards the tip, because that's what we're going to essentially solder or weld with anyways. So we're going to take our solder gun right here, and move the wires back from the motor, reach in there and kind of scrape. There's a silicone on the welds, on the solder spots that are on the motor right in here. So you're going to kind of just burn it away, push back a little bit, and then But before you do that, look in there and see exactly what contact points the wires are connected to, because there's essentially 4 spots it looks like it could be soldered to. Come on, focus. And that's horrible. Sorry guys. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's what we're gonna get right now. Anyways, you're gonna see the actual part of the broken wire will be connected to the point you're gonna connect to, anyways. So you'll see the little bit of broken wire sticking out on both spots, and that's the spot that you're gonna connect, obviously, the wires back to. So now that you've pushed back the silicone a little bit, and your wire is tinted, looking silver, then you'll take your flux and you will wet it, and then just dab a nice little wet spot there, nice little wet spot there. I'm sorry, wet spot on the red contact point, and then a wet spot on the black contact point. And like I said, the flux is just going to help it reflow again. So what that'll do is allow the two solders to stick together, the one on the wire that you just did and the one that's already on the contact points. So you'll go ahead and take your flathead screwdriver, which we talked about, and you will come on the side right here, okay, and push down the wire onto the contact spot. Okay, so it's applying pressure to where it's going to stick to, and then you're just going to stick your iron in there. Your tip, you can have a different soldering tip. Most soldering tips are really like sharp looking, or look like a point. I would have one here, but I don't. It'll just look like a point basically, and it doesn't matter what kind of tip as long as it fits in here. So you're going to push down, and then you're going to touch the contact points, touch the spot where you're going to solder both of them to. Hold down for probably 2 or 3 seconds, and then lift up, and then check and see that it's soldered by, kind of just pulling up on it a little bit. It should be stuck. Okay, and now that that one's done, you're going to do the back one. What I did first is I actually did the black one because it's in the back, and I didn't want to melt the red wire. So I bent the red wire back, pushed down the black one, soldered that one into spot. Then I came forward and I did the red one. That way I'm not melting all the wires or unsoldering something I already did. So after you've done that, you should be able, after you've soldered that, and you can see that it's connected. You're like, well, is it going to work? I don't know. So you'll turn your machine on. Oh, I'm sorry. Before you turn your machine on, push it all the way over until it touches in the corner there, because that's the alignment spot, and then turn it on. And you'll see it pops off from the reset button right there, and it'll go through its whole setup. And mine's kind of loud, but and then go ahead and set your depth settings. I always set my depths to 4 when I'm cutting vinyl or thin or paper or something like that. That's a thin material that goes on a mat. And then your pressure is going to be low, so you'll change your pressure to low. That's your pressure right there. And speed doesn't really matter. But this is for your test cut. And then you'll pop your thin material into there, or whatever material you want to do your test cut on, as long as you know the settings that you were using before. Okay, so just to be safe, that's a pretty safe setting right there. It may not cut through cardboard stock, but it'll cut through most thin material. So you'll do that. Put your material in there, do a trial cut, okay, but make sure you have your cartridge and your keypad on there and everything like that, and it should work just fine. Now, if you're still getting the issue, where it seems to be scoring, or I'll show you something I was doing when I was touching it before here. Let's turn it back on. Okay, so before, when the wires were messed up, when I'd push down on it and I'd let it go, it would hop up and down. It would just sit there and bounce up and down over and over and over again, because basically the motor didn't have anything to balance itself out, no electricity running through it, so it would just sit there on the spring and bounce back and forth. Either 1 or 2 of the contacts were bad. So if it's still doing that, if you push down on it and then let it go back up and it doesn't stop, then your connections weren't soldered good enough. So go ahead and apply heat to them, pull them off, clean those spots a little bit better, and then try to resolder them again. Or that's what I would say you need to do, is pull those off and resolder them again. Clean more of that gel crap away, because that gets in the way. But once you get it connected right and the power's on, it should just pop just like that, working just fine. And you can do your trial cut without the cover back on there because it saves you a little bit of work having to remove it again. But that's pretty much it, guys. So if your trial cut goes good, it's cutting again, hurrah, you didn't have to send it back to Provo Craft. Congratulations. Turn it back off, put your casing back on, and you're good to go. And next time you go to move it, put a piece of foam in there or something like that that keeps that motor from bouncing up and down. But that's pretty much it for this little installment of Cricut fixes. And I hope this helps a couple people out because I couldn't find a resource to fix this problem anywhere on the internet. So I put this up. Go ahead and like the video and say thanks if it helps you out. Appreciate it.